Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're reviewing AEW Collision from July 8th, 2023. If you haven't seen my videos before, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's jump right into it. We start the show with CM Punk coming out and cutting a promo, basically to hype his match later in the night against Samoa Joe. I thought this was really good. Obviously, it's CM Punk, one of the great talkers of all time. That leads us right into our match, our first of two Owen Hart semifinal matches. We get Powerhouse Hobbs against Ricky Starks. Hobbs has QT Marshall, Aaron Solo, and Harley Cameron with him. And that's important because they all come into play at some point. Eventually, QT distracts a ref while Hobbs has an obvious win, thus costing Hobbs the match when Starks gets the upper hand on him. So Starks does win the match. Afterwards, we see a blow up with Hobbs and QT Marshall. Aaron Solo eats a spine buster. Harley Cameron gets in between Hobbs and QT so he doesn't basically murder him. I thought this was a good match. I like the after effects because I'd like to see Hobbs broken off from QT's group, because I do think that Hobbs could be a potential main event wrestler. I don't think that the QTV or whatever they're going to call it is a main event faction. And that's not to say that they don't have a place on the card. I could definitely see using them as the pretty much lower card faction. There are some entertaining points to them. I'd like to see what they're doing with this Harley Cameron. She seems to have a good personality, and she's a beautiful woman. That's always going to be a plus. So there's that. But I do want to see Hobbs on his own, just going on a path of destruction or a path of rage, to borrow from his former stablemate. I thought this was good. I'm giving this a 4. Next up, we have a backstage video from Miro, and this was fantastic. He once again cursed his God, talked about his double-jointed wife. I mean, this guy is amazing. In a company that has a bunch of good talkers, CM Punk, the aforementioned, Chris Jericho, Bryan Danielson, Christian, Jay White, and a bunch of others I'm probably forgetting, Miro stands out. And that's awesome that he's able to stand out like that and to make himself special. He feels more special to me now than I think he's ever felt in his career. And much like Hobbs, I'd like to see him make a run at some big-time championships. He should be the AEW champion at some point. At the very least, the international champion, because I think he's just awesome. That's followed up with Willow Nightingale being interviewed in the back, basically saying that she was injured. Obviously, Athena comes right in. They kind of talk trash back and forth. They've moved their match to Rampage this coming Friday because Willow was obviously injured in her match with Julia in New Japan, which is a great match. You should go check that out if you can find it. Pretty cool little thing. Great to explain why an advertised match wasn't on the card instead of just ignoring it. We get a follow-up to that with the match that I guess replaced it. Julia Hart, not the same Julia that Willow wrestled, but a different Julia, going up against the local talent Bambi Hall. And there's something really great about the presentation of Julia Hart and all of the House of Black, but Julia specifically. This has really done wonders for her career. If there's anyone that's absolutely benefited from this group, it is her. And the music's great, she looks great, she looks like she fits the part. Her in-ring work is getting better and better every week. She runs through Bambi Hall like pretty much she's nothing. Julia does pick up the win here. I like that the commentary team brought up that she's 24-0 since joining the House of Black. I hadn't realized that she had racked up that many wins. Fantastic for them to bring that in there, and kudos to this announce team. I feel like I'm going to be a broken record on these reviews, but Nigel McGuinness and Kevin Kelly know how to make a match more important just by saying something like that, or talking up the history of CM Punk and Samoa Joe. Just phenomenal how they add that little pieces to it. The match itself, I'm going to give it 3. Like I said, it was good, but it wasn't much of anything. It was just a glorified squash match. That's followed up by Malachi Black video, where he talks about why the House of Black stole Andrade's mask and explains that his mask, Malachi Black's mask, brings out who he really is, whereas Andrade hides behind his mask. Kind of a cool thing here. I feel like it's them trying to recruit Andrade into the House of Black, which I don't know if that's a great fit, but if they do, I can't say I'd be mad at it. Then we get a retort from Andrade, and I said this last week, I think he's improved on what he did last week, this week, and here's the reason why. I mentioned last week that when he gets excited and he speaks in an English voice, which is obviously not his native language, he comes off a little corny. So when he was in English, he was more calm, more relaxed, more deliberate. Then when he got excited, he switched into Spanish, which I thought was fantastic, because you could feel the passion coming through. That's where what was missing last week, in my opinion. When he got excited and mad in English, I didn't feel the same passion I feel as when he speaks in Spanish. I thought this was really good. Go to break. After that, we get a tag team championship eliminator match representing Bullet Club Gold, Jay White and Juice Robinson, who if they win, they will get a tag title match going up against Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, FTR. The concept of a title eliminator match is kind of silly to me. Like, you have to beat the champion to get a championship match. That's just dumb. This match, however, was fantastic. These teams match up so well together, and part of it is the fact that they've basically been on an ongoing feud since the beginning of the show. Part of it's the fact that you have 4 top-tier wrestlers. I really feel like Bullet Club Gold is cementing themselves as the top heels in this TV show if it's going to be a hard brand split. It's the little things that Jay White and Juice Robinson do that add just that little bit. Like when he was crawling in the ring and pointing the gun at FTR, that was great. Or when they pull FTR off of the ring so they could keep the advantage. I'm not saying FTR isn't great. They're great too. They're one of the great tag teams of all time at this point. But this was just fantastic. This was probably my favorite match on the show. This and the main event, which we'll get there. They're probably 1A and 1B. Ultimately, Jay White and Juice Robinson do pick up the win here. I'm giving this a 5. I thought it was really good. It kept my interest the whole way through. I just love it. I can't wait till next week, and I'm going to talk about that here in a moment, because these guys just set the bar so high. We go to commercial, we come back from commercial, and FTR is being interviewed, asking about their loss, when Jay White and Juice Robinson interrupt, and basically say, we don't want to fight, we just come here to make a challenge. We want a 2 out of 3 falls match, your specialty, next week for the tag championship, which FTR agrees to, and they all shake hands. I gotta say, that was great. That was fantastic. It wasn't your typical beat each other up in the middle of a promo. You got 2 teams that are feuding with each other, but still showing each other the respect that they've built. I can't wait to see that match next week. I hope it's given at least 40 minutes, if not more. I know they're going to do Collision and then a Battle of the Belts hour, but hopefully they give each fall at least 10 minutes, because I think it'd be a great 2 out of 3 falls match, and probably in contention for one of the great matches of the year. That's followed up by our return of Scorpio Skye. He's facing off against Action Andretti. And wow, it's kind of funny how quickly Action Andretti has become an also-ran, in my opinion. And no knock on him, the guy is super talented. But coming off of the thing where he had the surprise win on Jericho, you would think he'd be better off in the company now. I mean, he beat one of the big stars. It could be argued that since the beginning of AEW, Jericho's been the ace of AEW, or one of the aces. You'd either say him, Moxley, or Omega. I mean, he's been in the most main events. He's main evented most pay-per-views. So beating a guy of that caliber, who's an absolute bona fide legend, should put you in a better standing than being the guy, then no offense to Scorpio Skye, it should put you in a better standing than being the guy that loses to Scorpio Skye on Scorpio's return. I'm not saying that losing to Scorpio Skye is a bad thing, just let's build to a great match between the two. Ultimately, Scorpio does win the match. I'm giving this one a 3. I thought it was good, but that's about it. Then we roll right into our main event of the show, the second of the 2 Owen Hart semifinal matches. The winner of this will go on to face Ricky Starks next week. We get Samoa Joe versus CM Punk. And I mentioned it earlier, how they built on their history, but I also liked how the commentary added a few things. They talked about how CM Punk, since the last time they fought, has studied with Duke Rufus and has MMA training under his belt now, where previously he didn't, so maybe now he knows how to get out of the coquina clutch. They also bring up how, even though Joe has beat CM Punk every time they wrestled before this, CM Punk has had a more successful career as far as championships. This was a phenomenal match. I mean, anytime you get CM Punk and Samoa Joe in the ring together, you're going to have magic, and this did not disappoint. I'm really torn between this and the tag match, which one's my favorite of the show, because they're both awesome. Ultimately, CM Punk does overcome Samoa Joe. He finally gets a win over his biggest adversary. Afterwards, they shake hands, which is all a ruse for for Samoa Joe to put him in the coquina clutch. And as Samoa Joe goes out to get a chair to do what he did to Roderick Strong to CM Punk this week, FTR comes out to make the save. We see Ricky Starks come out, but he only comes about halfway down the ramp and kind of stares at FTR and Punk in the ring, because obviously there's going to be a match next week between Starks and Punk. And I like that they're teasing that a bit. I hope that they don't go the route of turning CM Punk heel. I feel like the crowds are really getting behind him as possibly being the top babyface on this show. I mean, I could easily see him versus Jay White being the main feud for years on this show. This is a great match, a great way to end up the show. I'm giving it a 5. Overall, I found the show highly entertaining, as I have pretty much every week so far. I really enjoy the pacing of the show. I enjoy the matches. I enjoy the segments, the little vignettes that they give us. It's just a well put together show. I'm going to give this show a 4. I thought it was highly entertaining. I've been really enjoying AEW Collision. It's probably my favorite weekly show. With that being said, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't, and if you see where it says join, that's how you become a member. It definitely helps out the channel. If you made it all the way to the end, throw me a Scorpio Skye for the return of Scorpio. My name is George Coles, and this has been my review of AEW Collision.